I'm actually going to start us off with a question here. How many of you guys had parents that would read you a bedtime story before bed? Okay, me too. Good. How many of you guys have had at least one book in your entire life that you really genuinely enjoyed? Even more. Okay, that's good. Well, I actually brought a list of books with me today that I really enjoyed throughout my childhood, and I'm going to read them to you, and I'd like you to just raise your hand if you hear one that you really enjoyed in your childhood. Harry Potter. To Kill a Mockingbird. Ginny B. Jones. All right, I bet you're wondering why I'm just listing off random books for you instead of giving a speech, but I promise they all have something in common. And sadly, it's not because they are all particularly well known or that they're all very good novels, but it's that they are all on the American Library Association's Top 100 Banned Books list. Hi, I'm Katie Hopkins, and today I'm going to be talking about the right to read, or why we should not be banning books from our high school libraries. This is a topic that's very close to my heart. I was an avid reader growing up, and I have a little brother that's going into high school just next year. It's directly applicable to me, and I'm sure that each of you has a cousin, a sibling, or even just a friend that it applies to as well. I've split it up into 3 parts. First of all, censorship in school libraries is not valid, it is not ethical, and thirdly, it's not constitutional. Then we're going to lighten it up, and we'll find the light at the end of the tunnel and talk about what you guys can do to help. So let's just jump right in with the fact that censorship is not valid. The purpose of our high schools is to help teenagers transition from childhood to adulthood. Margaret Fuller once said, "Today a reader, tomorrow a leader." Adults are not censored in the books that they get to read, so censoring our school libraries contradicts their very purpose. You wouldn't ban a history textbook, so why would you ban a library book? Both have very controversial themes, say sex or violence or religion, but one happens to be on Andrew Jackson and the other one happens to be on, say, The Hunger Games. Either way, these students are going to get exposed to these issues. It's just whether they are exposed to these issues in a book of literary merit or from another kid in the hallway. Why wouldn't we want to expose our children to these issues in a way that shows them in the best light possible and the most accurately, as opposed to something convoluted from their peers? Furthermore, the main reason that schools ban books is their fear. Fear from helicopter parents swooping in to save their child from that Twilight sex scene. Even if it may be depriving the rest of the children of valuable knowledge that they need. One Miss Dolores Wilson, a librarian from Louisiana, encountered this exact problem. She reported that 3 sex-related books were placed in a restricted area where the students had to get permission from their parents to look at the books, and then they had to keep them in school. These kids, they're voting in elections. They're driving cars, some of them are even having sex, but why can they do all of these quote-unquote adult things, but they can't go check out Of Mice and Men from the library? Our job is to prepare our kids for the world. And if we cut off part of the world based on a parental guidance sticker, then we are not doing our job as a community. Now that we've gone over why censorship in libraries is not valid, let's look at why it's not even ethical at its core. Studies show that reading diverse books opens up a wider worldview to students. Students who read books become more culturally conscious and more aware. Am I saying that students will always agree with the topics that they study? No, of course I'm not saying that. But we can look at popular novel Huckleberry Finn. It is consistently banned for its use of the N-word. But popular author Anna Quindlen says that Huckleberry Finn provides the perfect teachable moment on the racial divisions in America, at least if you are not crippled by cowardice. We can use literature as a tool to teach our students right from wrong. Jane Smiley once said, "Think before you speak. Read before you think." Think about how you were in 8th grade. I know it's kind of painful, but I personally was not the best person when it came to judgment. Luckily, high school acted as a much-needed buffer year for me to get my head on straight and become a more tolerant and respectful individual who is now going to vote in the upcoming presidential election. Now think of yourself in 8th grade voting in the presidential election. It's kind of a scary thought, but this is essentially what we are doing when we ban books. There's a quote from a journalist from The Beacon that proclaims censorship is actually the dirtiest word in the English language. This is true. We ban books for things such as foul language, but censoring our worldview is what actually dirties our morality, and by proxy, our entire world. Now, we've talked about why censoring books from libraries is not valid, and we've talked about why it's not ethical. Let's go into why it's not constitutional. Even if you don't agree with it on an ethical standpoint, we have to uphold the ideals of our great nation. The precedent for banning books was set in 1982, where the New York School District wanted to ban Slaughterhouse-Five on account of it being anti-Christian. Now, the Supreme Court wanted to allow them freedom of speech, so they let the case pass. Yet, former Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas said in firm dissent, the right of freedom of speech and press includes not only the right to utter or to print, but the right to distribute, the right to receive, and the right to read. This faulty precedent actually ends up infringing on the very rights it was made to protect. Putting another nail in the coffin, the Library of Congress recently released a list called Books That Shaped America, and it declared them as reflecting America's unique and extraordinary literary heritage. Some of the books on this list were Fahrenheit 451, Charlotte's Web, and The Invisible Man. All books that I'm sure you can guess by now were banned. What we can take from this is that the ideals of inappropriate are all a matter of personal perspective. It's a personal decision that each of us gets to make for ourselves, not something that the government can do for us. Now, I know that we've gone over some pretty depressing stuff here. We've gone over the validity of banning books, the ethical standpoint, and its constitutionality. But let's lighten it up and talk about the big question. What can each of you do? Well, first of all, the main thing that we are missing right now is awareness. So really, spread the word. If you seize any censorship, report it, report it, report it. There are lots of great websites you can go to. The ALA, Project Censored, the National Coalition Against Censorship, just to name a few. Another thing that you can do that I'm a big fan of is participating in Banned Books Week, which is the last week in September where everyone celebrates their right to read. The American Library Association's president herself said that the ability to read, speak, think, and express ourselves freely is a fundamental freedom that sustains and upholds our democratic society. Banned Books Week serves as an opportunity to remind all of us that the freedom to choose books for ourselves and our family is a right, not a privilege. This is an easy platform to express to family and friends the topic of banned books, because you have the entire nation behind you. And finally, if this happens in your school system, fight it. Speak up, spread the word, go to the school board, tell other like-minded individuals, and let parents know that this is not actually helpful to their children. It's actually very harmful, because at the core of it, we all have the same goal in heart, and that's to do what's right for our kids. Look, I care very deeply about this issue. I love my little brother. He's very smart. He has a great big imagination, and it's kind of annoying, but I would hate it if that was squashed out of him based off of a school district's fear. I've looked at it from all three perspectives. It isn't valid. It holds no actual purpose in our schools. It isn't ethical. It's more harmful than it will ever be helpful, and it's not constitutional because it goes against our very First Amendment rights. So pick up a banned book. See what your sibling is reading, because I know that together we can save the world's words. Thank you.